So last time we were together, we made a pattern, we took our measurements, and we are now ready to cut our fabric with our pattern. I have my pattern. I have some tailor's chalk in red because I'm working on this off-white colored linen. And then I have my shears. So those are the tools that you're going to need right now. I also recommend something to pin your pattern down to the fabric or hold it down, pattern weights or something like that. What I have done here with my fabric is this is actually double folded. The fabric folded across the width of the fabric from selvage to selvage, and then I have it folded in half the long from cut to cut. So basically I have two folds that I'm working on, which is going to give me a total of 4 pieces here. I have already washed, dried, and ironed this fabric. I do recommend that anything you make, you do that beforehand, because that's going to allow your fabric to shrink if needed. You would rather it shrink before than after making a garment to discover that it didn't fit. I would also recommend washing it to get any kind of sizing or anything like that that the fabric manufacturer uses to give it stiffness, that sort of thing. So go ahead and place your pattern piece down on your fabric. When I cut this, I will have two pieces on the fold. So there will be 4 quarters all together. I have pretty essentially laid this out the way that I want it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lay a couple things on it to give us a little bit of weight so that we can begin cutting this out. I did not add a seam allowance into my pattern, so I'm going to add one now. I'm going to add 1/2 inch beyond my pattern. So I'm just going to begin tracing this out. I'm going to lay out my godet pattern 1/2 inch from that line. And then that's going to prevent me from having to draw another 1/2 inch. So this is the bit that we no longer need on the table. Don't think it's going to be wide enough for us to cut a sleeve out of, although if you needed to, you could piece your sleeve together along that top line or along that fold. If you wanted to, you could cut it this way, give yourself the seam allowance here. You could seam the top of that if you needed to fit that, let's say, into this bit of extra fabric here. You could make that work. I am not going to because I have plenty of this to use. But again, I understand that that's a privilege thing. And if you have, if you have the fabric to do it, then by all means, get a new piece and cut that out of one piece. But if you need to do that, you can piece the sleeves together. Piecing is period. All right, now because I only need 2 sleeves, I'm not doubling up the fabric this time. I'm going to just lay it out flat on the table. This is just a double layer. So there's 1 fold here. All right, now I'm going to take our sleeve pattern and I am going to lay it on the fabric. Something I'm going to do just a little bit different than normal is I'm going to turn this so that this sleeve is slightly on the bias. This is going to give it a little bit of give, a little bit of stretchiness when you wear it. It's not a true bias because it's not at a true 45-degree angle, but just that little bit of bias, especially around the elbow area, it's just going to make it a little bit more comfortable. Take my chalk, and once again, I'm going to do my 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Once you've done that, you can remove your pattern. Lift it up here. Remove the pattern. And cut out your sleeves. Now we almost have all the pieces that we need for our smock. Easy peasy. All right, so you have your sleeves. And now that's it. We have all of our pieces for our smock. Okay, so we have our pieces cut out. We are going to start pinning. So if you remember, the body piece that we cut out is in one great big tabard-like piece, actually, right now. So we need to get our godets, the sleeves over there. Get your godets. You should have 4 of them. I'm going to pin my godets from the bottom all the way up. But if you remember in the last video, I mentioned that we need to make sure that we attach a straight grain, like the body of our smock, to a bias grain, which is what we have going on the godets. If you see how that stretches right there, that is our bias grain. And then we have a straight grain. So we want to make sure that we are going to be pinning the bias grain to the straight grain of the smock. So I'm going to match my bottom corners up, and then I'm going to begin pinning. We are just going to pin that together, and we are just going to pin and pin and pin until we can't pin anymore. So line up your edges as you go. I myself like to pin all of my godets on before I go to the sewing machine. That way when I sit down at the sewing machine, I can do them all at once. Alright, first one down. Now I'm going to jump over to the other side of that piece. Make sure when you do this, you pin right sides together. Find your bias edge. So yeah, we're just going to keep pinning these pieces on. Same way we did the last one, match them up at the bottom. All right, one half is done there. And I will come back in a minute after I put these last 2 pieces on. I'm not going to force you to sit and watch through all of that. Okay, so hopefully by now you have pinned your godets to your body piece. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to do a 1/2 inch seam on all 4 of the sides. Alright, so we now have 4 attached godets. Let's see there, I have the godets attached on all 4 sides. Alright, so I've got my iron, I've got my fabric laid out. I'm going to press these open first just to get a nice clean seam line on the outside here to work with. See, it just gives you a nice flat seam. But once I have pressed those out flat, I am going to take them and press them towards the godet. Just take one side and I'm going to press it towards the outside here. That's just going to set it up to make this flat filling so much easier when it becomes time to do that. Ow. Please don't burn yourself, that hurts. Alright, and I'm going to do the same thing with all 4 of my seams. I promise, guys, pressing your seams is probably one of the most important things as a sewer, as a seamstress, as a sewist, whatever word you want to use, that you can do to really up your sewing game. Pressing your seams just makes the finish so much more professional looking. I used to be kind of a what I would consider lazy sewer. I was like, that's just a straight seam. I'm not going to press my seams out, just so I could get finished faster. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer to press your seams. But man, I'm telling you, the look of a finished garment that has nicely pressed seams while sewing, I just think it looks so much better. And please don't call me out for judgment. I'm not judging anyone. You know, if you don't have the ability to press your seams, but you still sew, then by all means, continue doing what you're doing. But if you want to up your game, I definitely recommend pressing your seams. That is a great place to start getting some really good professional results. So, you know, that just, in my opinion, that kind of just takes you up to the next level. So if you want to advance in your sewing, that's my first recommendation, no matter what you're sewing, whether it's something small, like doll clothes or, you know, quilts. I mean, obviously, if you're a quilter, you probably know the importance of pressing, especially when you're working with those tiny 1/4 inch seams. You know, but even with bigger garments, when you're working with bigger seams, it's just so important to get just a nice finish. So that's my recommendation. Take it for what it is, you know. All right, so you can see I've got my seams now. They were pressed open, and now I have pressed them all to the outside. So we are actually ready to go ahead and attach our sleeves. Okay, so the book gives us 2 ways that we can set or sew these sleeves in. Sew up the side seams and then set in the sleeve. Or we can sew the sleeve along the side flat, and then sew up the side seams all at once. Sewing the sleeve in flat and then sewing up the side all at once is going to be the easiest way to do this. So what I'm going to do is we have our the outside, the right side of our godet here, and as you can see, it runs to the body piece, and there is, if I fold back the godet seam, what happens is I get this little twist between the body fabric and the godet. Well, I don't want that twist, because that twist is going to cause some problems when I sew the sleeve on. So what I'm going to do, you see that little piece right there, I am going to trim this just like a little, not a notch, but just a little trim to the seam line so that I can fold that flat. And then when I sew the seam on, or the sleeve on, I get one whole, one whole straight line there, because I'm going to fold these back when I'm sewing the sleeve on. So hopefully that makes sense to you. That's just a little snip to prevent the twist. So now I'm going to put my other sleeve on. I'll get that pinned on. All right, same thing we did the last time. We're going to mark our sleeve head. The point here of our sleeve head is right here. Okay, and I know that because here's the fold, the center fold for our sleeve. So let's see, I've marked that. And now I'm going to take the sleeve head, the longest piece here. I'm going to fold this in half. And I'm going to just give it a little finger press so that when I open it up, we'll be able to see the fold. All right, so there's the fold on that. I'm going to mark that. That's our sleeve head. That's the point of our sleeve. So this is the right side to right side. So right sides together. I'm going to match up those marks, those sleeve head marks there. I just want to make sure that I'm going to mark those, and then I'm going to pin that right there where the 2 points meet. And now we're going to pin the rest of the sleeve on, just like we did before. Do want to make sure that you fold back your godet seams between the words are hard today. You want to make sure that you fold back your godet seam so that you don't get it caught in your sleeve seam. There we go. All right, and I'm just going to pin that down all the way up to the sleeve head, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And remember that little twist that that little clip that we put in, that helps us to keep things nice and straight, nice and even when we're sewing this sleeve on. You just want to make sure that you're matching up your edges when you put your pins in. And once we sew this sleeve on, we are going to again press our seams. And again, when you start this, don't forget to start your 1/2 inch in away from the edge here. You're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So sew on our sleeve. And that's our sleeves now attached. Okay, so I just did a whole bunch of stuff and realized that I wasn't filming. So let's do this, pressing the seams of the sleeve. First, we press them open. All right, so we press them open and then we press them in to the body. That is going to help us when it comes time to fell these seams later. So now that we have pressed all of our seams, the next thing that we need to do is we are going to take our smock and we are going to find the halfway point of the body of the sleeve, the underarm, all the way down to the hem. We are going to fold this in half, right sides together, pinning it. We're going to pin everything, and then we are going to sew up our side seams. And once we do that, we are going to have a wearable smock. So I'm having a serious issue with forgetting to hit the record button today. So what I have done here is I have pinned at the underarm, matching the sleeve seams together. And then I have started working my way backwards, just making sure that everything is nice and straight. Because sometimes, and as you can see here, we've got a little bit of a curve discrepancy with the end of our wrist. So I'm going to trim that piece off. But that's why I want to work from the underarm out to make sure that we can deal with that when it comes time. So yeah, we're just going to keep pinning until we get to the end of the sleeve. All right, so I have pinned that sleeve. Now I am going to come to the body part here, and I am going to match these godets from the, and again, what I did earlier when I trimmed and turned, I'm going to do the same thing here with these two body seams, because what I want to do is I want to sew to the sleeve seam, and then I want to go down the body seam, but I don't want my fabric to twist. So now I have a nice flat seam to work with all the way around. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know and I will try to explain better. Sometimes I struggle with that. Close to being done. Now that we have pinned this side together, we are going to go ahead and stitch it up, and then we will do the same to the other side. All right, so now we've got this all pinned, so we're going to, again, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we're just going to go straight from the edge of the sleeve, the end of the sleeve, all the way up. Hi, sweetheart. I am. Do you want to come say hi? Mm-hmm. All right, so my daughter's just come in. Here she is. This is Phoenix. She's my 5-year-old. And she's been off playing with friends. So, yeah, we're just sewing. Mommy's doing a little Smock video. Yeah. And now you get to be in it. You're going to be here for a little while?
Yeah.
That's fine.
And help you do the video.
Oh, you're going to help me do the video?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just doing some...
I knew you were going to do a video, so
okay.
I just want to help you.
Okay. Well,
so it doesn't be stressful for you.
Oh, well, thank you. You're so thoughtful.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just sewing up the side seam of the smock. So would you like to come over here? Actually, you know what? Why don't you take that pin case there? And can I hand you pins and you can put them on the pin tray?
Sure.
Is that how you want? Is that a good way to help?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. Now you can be in the video a little bit more.
Yeah. Instead of on that little.
All right. So we're going to get back to this so we can get it finished because we're almost at the end. All we have left to do is sew up the sides, and then we get to do the seam finishing, which is a lot of hand work. So that's not going to be as exciting, but we're almost done. So yay. All right, so back to sewing.
I haven't got to say hi yet. Hi. Friends at home. Hi, friends at home.
Go ahead and we're going to pin the other side, and then we're going to sew the other side, and then we are just about done, at least with all the construction. So okay, so we have one side sewn together, and again, next thing to do is to pin the other side. So working the same way. I went from the shoulder, or from the underarm out to the wrist. And now I'm working from the underarm down to the hem, pinning as I go. that all pinned. It's time to pull my sewing machine back out and let's stitch up this last side. Okay, so we now have both sides sewn up. All of the construction part of this smock is finished. So from here on out, I'm going to go ahead and press these seams that I just sewed in, and then the finishing work begins. Flat felling some hem stitches, and finishing the neckline, and then this thing will be ready to go. So stay tuned. Let's see. Yeah, let me know below if you have any questions.